Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military Summary channel, and this short video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous night of the local time. And first we're going to continue with Odessa and Kherson directions. The Russians continue bombing and attacking the Ukrainian forces inside of the town by the name of Kizomys. This is the second day in a row when we receive additional video from the territory. I'll remind you that a few days ago the head of Ukrainian army Syrsky reported that Ukrainians established complete control over these islands. So most likely the Ukrainians continue concentration of forces on this direction, and this is the reason why the Russians are so concentrated on this area. Furthermore, we continue receiving updates from Odessa itself. Probably 6th or 7th day in a row the Russians are bombing the town heavily. Today we got additional videos from inside of Odessa itself. For example, on this video we can see the strike, very heavy strike with the use probably of something like Iskander or maybe something else, and we have significant number of videos from Odessa itself of big fire that took place in the central part of the town. So very big power, and according to information we have, the Russians destroyed the post office, at least damaged the post office, but most likely we understand that there were no post office inside. There were probably something like ammo depot or some kind of warehouse with the military equipment that was destroyed as a result of Russian strike. Obviously we can give a point to Russia based on the results of that attack. Furthermore, we have reports that as a result of strikes that took place during the previous days, significant number of Ukrainian officers and the, let's say, members of headquarters of the south were destroyed. Now we're moving further to in direction of the south, Donetsk, and first we're going to talk about Velika Novoselovka direction. We continue receiving updates from the south of Urozhaine, and today we got another geolocations, a few more geolocations confirming the Russian progress in the farms to the south of the village. For example, on this moment, exactly on this, we can see the strike, let's say, on Russian positions in the farms. So that video was geolocated here. But as we can see, no progress further to the north in direction of the central. But when talking about other mappers, they're saying that the Russians are moving not just along 0518 road, like something like this. The Russians are moving using the broad frontline attack, and as a result of clashes, the Russians established complete control over the entire south of Urozhaine. So according to most of the mappers, this is approximately the current control of the armed forces of Russian Federation. So significant progress, as you can see, and the Russians are moving further, and the Russians are not going to stop. So the progress, information with the progress was confirmed not just by pro-Ukrainian deep state, but also by other neutral mappers. Now we're moving further in direction of Novomikhailivka Konstantinovka, where we also got additional updates. The Russians during the previous night, according to different sources, managed to improve their positions on the line Stepovo-Vodyane. So a few more, let's say, 3 lines, a few more fields were captured by the Russians during the previous 48-24 hours. Furthermore, if you remember, yesterday we were talking that the Russians, according to some sources, managed to establish complete control over the village by the name of Paraskovyevka. Today we continue receiving different updates from the direction, but most of them not about the center of the town, but about the pummeling and fabbing the area with FAB 1500. The Russians are saying that as a result of few strikes with FAB 1500, the most of the Ukrainian, let's say, garrison was completely defeated and destroyed. So the clearing operation is ongoing. Now we are moving further to the most important area, to, let's say, Ocheretino direction. As you can see, we have adjustments and changes on the map. Today, during the previous night, most of the mappers updated their maps, showing significant progress of the armed forces of Russian Federation. What is important, let's talk about the area between Arkhanhelske, Keramic, and Ocheretino itself. Yet, once again, most of the mappers are updating their maps, and you follow them, I believe so. But you need to understand that for now we still haven't received even a single geolocated confirmation of Russian control over the area that is currently selected, this one. Furthermore, according to all these reports, the Russians have already established complete control over Novokalinovo, Keramic, Ocheretino, but yet the Ministry of Defense of Russian Federation also haven't stated or confirmed this progress. So for now, of course, we are adjusting the map based on the reports, making these the bigger and bigger gray zone, but without any changes of the red color area. So let's talk about the information we have. First, for example, the pro-Russian mappers, either pro-Russian mappers, pro-neutral mappers, and pro-Ukrainian mappers reported that the Russians established complete control not just over Keramik, Novokalinova, not just entered inside of Arkhanhelske. Also, the Russians managed to establish complete control over the stronghold and the, let's say, this rich network of fortifications between the villages, forcing the Ukrainians to fall back. Furthermore, as you can see, the Russians managed to move even further to the north in direction of Kalinova, you see, and according to information we have, according to Deep State, pro-Ukrainian mappers, the Russians managed to cut these tree line as well. We're talking about this defense belt. The Russians managed to cross this area and to establish complete control over the intersections of the tree lines of the direction, and most likely this situation will also force the Ukrainians to fall back even further to the north in direction of Kalinova. So the Russians are advancing. The Ukrainians, if the situation is confirmed, the Ukrainians has no chances to hold Arkhangelsk for a very long time, and if the situation is like this, the Ukrainians will be forced to fall back. Currently, we can't tell for sure whether the Russians have already introduced additional 10,000 soldiers of reinforcements that they were promised to do, but most likely we are the witnesses of the consequences of work of that additional 10,000 soldiers that the Russians introduced during the previous few days. Now we are moving to the western flank of Arkhangelsk. There are very heavy clashes inside of Oleksandrivka, and today, for the first time since the, let's say, beginning of the battles on this direction, we start receiving the first FAPS arrivals inside of Oleksandrivka. This is very important because, first of all, the sky is clear for the Russian aviation, and the Russians start bombing the town, preparing the settlement for further stay there by the Russians. Also, we have some improvements by the Russians in the vicinity of the village. The Russians capture additional tree lines and getting closer and closer to the southeastern part of the village. So the situation is very critical. Furthermore, we got a report that 47th Brigade, after probably half a year of very heavy clashes on Berdichi direction, Ocheretina direction, lost its combat capabilities completely. According to information we have, since the, let's say, the creation or since the beginning of operationing of this brigade, the Ukrainians lost around 40 Bradleys from 200 Bradleys they had, and 5 of 31 tanks Abrams. So it's significant losses. Now they need to, let's say, to be sent for some replacements and additional, let's say, reinforcing, which is obviously is going to take place very soon. So the situation in Ocheretina is getting worse, and once again, as we discussed in the previous updates, currently, as I understand, the Russians have two goals: to get as close as possible to Novokalinova and to enter the village. The second thing, the Russians obviously planning to establish complete control over Arkhangelsk and over Oleksandrivka. So these three towns and settlements are about to be captured by the Russians. Now we are moving further to Chasiv Yar direction. According to pro-neutral mappers, the Russians finished their offensive operation in Stupki-Golubkovki forest, and as a result of attack, the Russians have almost reached the Seversky Donetsk-Donbass canal along this forest. So the Russians are about to establish first control, or to more precisely control over the first ground, let's say, area of Seversky Donetsk-Donbass canal. So this, like, maybe today they're going to do this, maybe today, obviously today. When talking about Sever's direction, the Russians continue pummeling and reducing to ruins the Ukrainian, let's say, fortifications in the vicinity of Sporna. Few more videos of RBK 500, of the use of RBK 500 were received on this direction. So the Russians are still getting prepared to final offensive. Belogorovka, no changes, and now we're moving to, let's say, south in Kupiansk direction. We have updates from Ukrainian 912th Brigade of Special Purposes Azov. They started their personal mobilization, most likely due to significant losses that took place during the previous months of clashes on this direction, or maybe the Ukrainians are trying to get ready before further offensive operation from those sides, their side in direction of Kreminna. North in Kupiansk direction, we have additional updates from Kislovka, Kotlarovka. We have two interesting videos. On this video, we can see the use of RBK 500 along the railways that were heading towards towards Kupiansk. They're heading toward Kupiansk. We can't tell for sure what exactly the Russians were doing there, and we have another video of how the Russians were bombing the Ukrainian forces inside of Kislovka. So during the previous days we got lots of mappers updates in the area and just one video of Russian control over this part of let's say Kislovka. We haven't received any updates confirming Russian control, but most of the mappers updated their maps based on the Telegram messages. So most likely this part of Kislovka still remains under the Ukrainians. Maybe if we continue receiving updates from this part of the village, we'll adjust the map once again. The sources reported that during the previous 24 hours, the Russians began offensive operation in the direction of Sinkovka, more precisely further to the east, so trying to bypass Sinkovka this way. Currently, we can't tell for sure about this operation because we don't have any geolocations confirming this, just a report. The Russian sources published a very interesting video of how they managed to discover 2 HIMARS launching systems in the vicinity of the village by the name of Likovka. The Ukrainians were using those HIMARS most likely to attack Lugansk region. If you remember, yesterday we discussed the, let's say, Ukraine attacks on the Russian positions with ATACMS, when as a result of that attack the Ukrainians, according to our information, managed to destroy the very big concentration of Russian forces. And today we got the video of how the Russians destroyed 2 HIMARS systems on Kharkiv direction. Once again, most likely those 2 HIMARS systems were used by the Ukrainians to attack Russia. Maybe, most likely. Let's say the Lugansk area with that concentration of forces. During the previous 24 hours, we haven't received anything from the northern direction, just few updates of FAP's arrivals on the borderlands. So the Russians continue clearing operation. Today is the 2nd of May. Few days left before the victory day, and after that something big most likely is going to happen. And that's it for the short video. Military Summary channel reminds we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.